Welcome to the Business of Apparel podcast. This is the place to learn how to start and scale your own apparel brand and fill it with loyal customers for years to come. I'm your host, Rachel Erickson, owner and CEO of Unmarked Street, and I can't wait to share this episode with you. Welcome back to the Business of Apparel podcast. This week, we are continuing our 40 to 40 series where I am giving you the chance to get to know me a little bit better, to figure out if I am the right podcast host for you, to figure out if I am the right consultant for you, to figure out if the Business of Apparel community is the right community for you. And hopefully, as we go through this entire series, it's going to be a 6-week series and we are in week 2. You can kind of figure that out for yourself and figure out if you want to grow with us as we grow our community, or if you want to head somewhere else, because I am just not your cup of tea. That's kind of what we're doing here these 6 weeks. And so what I wanted to go through a little bit today is a little bit more about my Midwest background. So I was born in Ohio to a very large family. My dad is one of 4, but my mom is one of 10. So we have been watching The Bear on Hulu, and I love cooking. And so watching The Bear is like this amazing combination of watching like drama TV shows with cooking shows that I just think is brilliant. It's also why like Bradley Cooper's movie Burnt is like one of my favorite movies. The movie Chef is another one of my favorite movies. So I get really into these things, but we are actually literally right now in the middle of the Christmas episode that they did in season 2, which is an extra long episode. We started it last night, not realizing that it was an extra long one. So we kind of paused it in the middle. So I haven't even finished it yet, but what kind of hit me really funny was this entire like family situation where there are just like dozens of people in a house. And so when I talk about my mom being one of 10, like it was a really big deal whenever we were all in the house together, like at Christmas or Thanksgiving or for like family reunions or whatever we did, because there would be up to like 40 or 50 of us in a house like that, basically comprised of like 3 main rooms. And then a bunch of us were like outside running around depending on the weather. And so like this kind of like mass chaos that was happening in the episode, and like these side conversations that were getting mixed in with like main conversations, and people like yelling down the hallway to figure out where somebody is, and then like other people over here having this like little whispering like kind of conversation just like was triggering me. I could not stop laughing at the entire episode because it just felt like home to me. So my grandparents owned actually a farm that was about 20-minute drive away from where we lived. And so I got to know my grandparents really, really well when I was really young. My dad's parents also lived really close by. They were high school sweethearts. So my grandparents lived in the same town. And so we got to know all of our grandparents really well, my sister and I, which I think was a really beautiful childhood. Growing up so close to the farm really gave me an appreciation for how to behave around animals, how to behave and love land, how to be in nature and be respectful of it. And so that is something that is just really inherent to me and who I am. And I know like me and a lot of my cousins, I am one of 28 first cousins that I have. So I'm not sure. We put out like this really funny meme that like kind of went viral on my personal Instagram not too long ago. But it was like in my big fat Greek wedding, when Tula is like complaining about having 27 first cousins, like I actually beat that number. So believe it or not, like my big family is actually a little bit bigger than that. And so when we were all together, it was really, really special to be at the farm. And there are a lot of cousins that I have, especially younger ones, who remember the farm as like one of their favorite places on the planet. Growing up that way, I think, was really interesting. We were a big German Catholic family. I grew up in the Catholic Church. I went to Catholic school from kindergarten through 6th grade before I decided to make the transition to public school, and just kind of was brought up on that kind of like, we all love each other, but we all drive each other nuts, and we're all going to get together a few times a year, whether we like it or not, kind of mentality. And so if you're watching The Bear and you've seen the Christmas episode, just know that like that's what my life looked like when I was a little kid. And so all of my aunts and uncles would have been the adults, and I would have been one of the little kids running around, but that was really typical for me. And I have always been a little bit of an oddball out when it comes to my family. So my family was definitely centered around the medical field. My mom's dad was a doctor. He was kind of the local town doctor. He had his own office, had his own practice. And my dad's mom was his head nurse for several years. So that's kind of how the families knew each other. And so it it was inevitable that I think a lot of his kids, so my aunts and uncles and my mom, were going to actually go into the medical field. So my parents are in the medical field. I have so many aunts and uncles in the medical field. And when it came to me deciding to go to college and what did I want to do, immediately it was like, well, pre-med, of course. What else am I going to do with my life? Like, this is what everybody that I know does. And if you've listened to, like, I think one of my very first podcast episodes, I talk about how my mom actually came up to me while I was sitting sewing in her dining room, because that's what I did all the time in high school. You could basically just find me sitting at the sewing machine constantly. She came up to me and said, "Why are you going into pre-med? Why not go to fashion design school?" And so I think that really kind of flipped things on its head. And from that time forward, I think it kind of propelled me down this path. It allowed me to break away from what I thought kind of the typical life was supposed to look like. You know, we were brought up, especially me, as like what they call us geriatric millennials, right? I'm turning 40. So I'm in that like small group of millennials. We're actually some of the oldest millennials. A lot of us were brought up to believe, you know, you get a college degree, you get married, you have a family, you've got the kids, you've got the house. And so a lot of us who chose to walk a different path from that, I think felt a little bit lonely and felt a little bit weird. And it took me a really long time to find that there are plenty of others out there just like me, and there are plenty of other communities out there that I absolutely belong to. But one of the first things that really started to hit me hard when I started to go to art school was that there was a big, wide world out there that was very, very different from Ohio. Are you frustrated by feeling like an outsider in your own industry? You're not alone. I spent years feeling the same way. Are you tired of endless research and you can only learn this stuff by getting a job in fashion advice? Me too. That's why I created the Business of Apparel online course. My years of insider knowledge condensed into video tutorials, demos, and downloads. Learn at your own pace, no fluff. Just key topics like building target profiles and mastering financials. This information is genuinely unavailable anywhere else. Grow your brand, become an apparel industry aficionado, and unlock millions in potential revenue. The value? Over $50,000 with millions potential for your brand. Don't miss out. Sign up for the Business of Apparel online course today at thebusinessofapparel.com/course. And so me growing up in the Midwest, I think having this picture of what my life was supposed to look like, and then being encouraged to kind of step outside of that box, go to art school, get a fashion degree, I think was something that really opened up my entire world to other opportunities. And so it didn't take me long actually to feel like I was one of the people. And I'm going to go back to the bear episode here where like the bear at one point is talking to his aunt who kind of encourages him to like get out of there. Like, come stay with me in New York for a while. You need to not be here because the mentality of this place will kill you. And there was a little bit of that for me where I felt like if I stay here, if I stay in Ohio and I stay in the Midwest, I'm never going to have the kind of experiences that I want to have for my life. And so I became one of those people who it sounds so terrible to say this, but I feel like this is just what's said about it. Like, you become desperate to leave. And you become one of the people who doesn't even want to be known as someone from Ohio or someone from the Midwest. And while I feel really proud of that heritage, and I feel like I had a beautiful childhood, and I feel like I really loved being there when I was there, I did absolutely become the type of person who wanted to move on. And so when I was given the opportunity at the University of Cincinnati to do some internships, my number one place that I wanted to go to was New York City. So as I was a sophomore and my first internship opportunity was coming up, I applied to every place that I possibly could in New York, got a job at a company called Briefly Stated Incorporated, which did like licensed graphic designs for Walmart and Target and some like other major big box brands. And so I learned apparel graphic design, learned how to do repeats. I got really, really good at Adobe Illustrator while I was there. But I got to live in New York for 6 months, and I got to shop in New York for 6 months, and I got to eat New York food for 6 months and live that fast-paced lifestyle and just really immerse myself in a big, big city. And that, like, I ran with that, I feel like, for the rest of my life. Like that mentality of being able to travel, that mentality of being able to be somewhere where there's so much opportunity and so much going on, and you can walk anywhere and you can take public transit. You don't even need a car. Like all of that kind of stuff is still really, really big in my heart. And that's the kind of stuff that, like, as even we today at like 40 years old are looking for like an ideal, perfect place to live, we're looking for similar things. Like, does this town have some form of public transit? Can I walk to a bunch of different places? And so even though we might not be in New York proper, or we might not be in an exactly huge city, we are kind of looking for a little bit of that feel, while also wanting to find people who remind us of people in the Midwest. And that's really hard to find. I think that's why we've come back here to Colorado, because there is opportunity to find a big, like, conglomeration of those different things. So like where we're at right now, like the people are super friendly. Like we go for a walk and people just want to say hello and ask you how you're doing and where are you from. And people are so friendly. Drivers are considerate when we're out on our bikes. They don't want to like run us off the road, which is bonkers amazing coming from California. But at the same time, like I can walk 5 minutes and I can be at restaurants, I can be at shops, I can be on my bike for 15 minutes and be at my best friend's house. Like, so there's a lot, I think, that provides for us here in that way. There's definitely been a big part of that for me, where I have this like core from the Midwest, but I also have always really wanted to kind of get out of the Midwest. But I also really appreciate what the Midwest offers in the way of its beauty. Like if you go to Ohio in June or July, like it is so vibrantly green. It's beautiful. And I think there's just a lot that's there, and there's a lot to be proud of from being there, including, I think, the kindness and the manners and the morality that you do tend to get by growing up in families like mine. I just want to give a huge shout out. If I know some of my family listens to this podcast every once in a while, and I just want to say hello. Your support genuinely means the world to me. The fact that you guys are listening, I'm gonna cry. I'm not gonna cry. But it means so much to me that you guys are out there, like paying attention, supporting me even after I left after all those years. And I know it's been a long time since I've seen a lot of you guys, but I think about you often, and I am here. So the second confession that I'll make today in regards to being from the Midwest, my husband makes fun of me for this all the time. So my dad is Ohio State alumni. If you pay attention to sports at all, then you know all about the Ohio State Buckeyes. And my husband hates that. He hates the thing. And it cracks me up. So I try to say it as often as I possibly can. But I grew up on Ohio State culture, on Ohio State football, on Ohio State sports, on like we used to visit Ohio State campus every year to either go to a game or even just like have some food and wander around. That was kind of just an activity that we like to do. And so when I applied to schools, Ohio State did have a fashion merchandising program, but I really wanted to go to a fashion design program. And what I loved about the University of Cincinnati is that it had the robust internship program that it did. So after 5 years of school at the University of Cincinnati, you also had to have 18 months of mandatory on-the-job, real-world internship experience. And there was nothing really like that I could find in any of the other fashion design programs in the entire US. I'm sure that's changing now, but at the time, that was unprecedented, and I wanted to be a part of that. I also wanted to be a part of the UC program because it gave me an elevated degree. So instead of a bachelor's of fine arts with a fashion design major, I actually have a bachelor's of science and design. And that's because of the kind of education and the kind of degree that you can get at the University of Cincinnati. So my confession here is that even though I went to the University of Cincinnati, I am a proud Bearcat. I loved my time in Cincinnati. I actually don't know the alma mater at UC, but I do know the Ohio State alma mater. And so whenever we're watching Ohio State games and the alma mater comes on, I actually can sing that along with the team. But I couldn't do that for the same thing if I were watching a UC game. So there's my confession for the day. I actually know a lot more about being at Ohio State, being a Buckeye, but I am a UC Bearcat. So there we go. If there's anything else you'd like to learn about me or learn about the Midwest or learn about my childhood and background growing up in Ohio, I would love to chat with you about it. We will continue this 40 to 40 series next week, where I'll continue talking about things you probably don't know about me. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review for us. And if you're interested in contacting me for any reason at all, you can always go to unmarkstreet.com/contact. I look forward to hearing from you, and I'll see you next week. Thank you so much for listening to the Business of Apparel podcast. I would so appreciate hearing your thoughts on the show. And if you know someone who could benefit from it, please share it with them. My biggest desire is to help other apparel professionals understand the nuances of our industry so we can all work toward making better product for a better world. If you would like to connect further, I'd love to invite you to send me a message through my website, thebusinessofapparel.com, where I do weekly trainings through my YouTube video channel, a weekly newsletter, blog articles, and so many more resources to help you start and scale a profitable apparel brand. This podcast is produced by Box 7 Media, who I cannot speak highly enough of. If you're looking to start your own podcast, you can reach out to Jeremy at Box 7 Media on LinkedIn anytime.